Have you ever met an Aries and felt completely thrown off by their energy? Maybe it was their boldness or their fearless confidence that left you wondering whether they were just showing off or genuinely confident. Aries can come across as intense, brash, and even overwhelming at times. But here's the thing. Most of us don't truly understand them. Their passionate nature often leads to them being misunderstood, and not just by people who don't know them well, but even by close friends and family. It's easy to assume that someone who's always charging forward, taking charge of every situation, and expressing their opinions loud and clear is just arrogant. And let's not even get started on their quick temper. If you've ever had a run-in with an Aries when they're frustrated, you know that it's like a spark setting off a wildfire. But is this really who they are? Is it all about ego and anger? Or is there something deeper? I'd argue that there's a lot more to Aries than meets the eye. Aries don't act this way because they want to make others feel small or inferior. In fact, it's the opposite. Their boldness stems from a deep sense of self-belief. It's not arrogance, it's confidence. A confidence that's often misunderstood by those who don't understand the fire that fuels them. And their quick temper? Well, it's just part of their passionate nature. But once that anger burns out, it's gone, and they're back to being their usual energetic selves. So, what exactly are we missing when we think of Aries as just fiery and impulsive? Let's dive into the first two reasons why Aries is often misunderstood. The first one might just surprise you. Number one, boldness, mistaken for arrogance. When you think of an Aries, one of the first things that likely comes to mind is their boldness. Aries individuals don't just step into a room, they own it. They speak their minds, take risks, and rarely second-guess their instincts. This natural assertiveness can be incredibly refreshing to some people, but for others, it might come off as arrogance. It's easy to see how someone who's so confident, so willing to take charge in any given situation, could be misinterpreted as someone who thinks they're better than everyone else. But here's the truth. Aries are not arrogant. They are self-assured, and there's a big difference between the two. To understand why this is so often misunderstood, let's break it down. Aries, ruled by Mars, are driven by their desire to conquer and achieve. This drive is what fuels their boldness. They don't hold back in their actions or their words because to them, the world is there for the taking, and they are the ones who will seize it. Their confidence is not about putting others down, but about knowing they can face whatever challenges come their way. An Aries can walk into a room and instantly take charge of a conversation or a situation because they truly believe they are capable. They don't hesitate to speak their mind, often saying exactly what they're thinking without worrying about how it might be received. This can be jarring, especially for those who are more reserved or who prefer a more subtle, gentle approach. But Aries' boldness isn't a sign of superiority. It's a product of their genuine belief in themselves. They've had to rely on their instincts throughout their lives, and that has built them into people who trust their judgment and aren't afraid to stand out. It's not arrogance, it's confidence, a belief that they can make an impact, no matter what. Unfortunately, not everyone sees it that way. Sometimes, their confident energy can intimidate those who are less assertive or unsure of themselves. When others aren't used to such directness or self-assurance, it's easy to misinterpret it as arrogance. But Aries doesn't think they are better than anyone else. They just don't feel the need to apologize for who they are. So, if you've ever misjudged an Aries for being arrogant, take a moment to reconsider. They're just people who believe in their abilities and are unapologetically themselves. Their boldness isn't about diminishing others. It's about embracing who they are and showing the world what they're made of. If anything, Aries can teach us to be more confident in our own skin. The next time you meet an Aries, remember that their energy comes from a deep place of self-belief, not superiority. They're not trying to make you feel small. They're just living life large and expecting others to do the same. Number two, impulsivity misunderstood as recklessness. If there's one thing that Aries is known for, it's their impulsivity. Aries are notorious for jumping headfirst into situations without always thinking them through. They trust their gut and act on instinct, which can sometimes lead them down unpredictable paths. While this might seem reckless to the outside observer, there's a deeper, more thoughtful layer to Aries' actions than meets the eye. The reason Aries act impulsively isn't because they're reckless or careless, but because they are wired to seize the moment. They live in the present. To an Aries, hesitation is the enemy, and waiting for the perfect time to act is a luxury they don't feel they have. They feel a deep urgency to move forward, to make things happen, and they believe that taking action is better than standing still. This drive is rooted in their natural desire to lead, create, and conquer. To them, every moment is an opportunity for growth, and the more they wait, the more they risk losing that chance. But here's where the misunderstanding comes in. Aries' impulsivity is often seen as a lack of thought or consideration for the consequences. When they rush into something, it can appear as if they haven't thought it through or don't care about what might happen next. In reality, however, Aries do think ahead. They're just willing to take risks. They understand that not every decision will be perfect, but they also know that no decision at all could be worse. For Aries, action is the solution, and in their minds, it's better to act now and figure things out as they go. This impulsive nature can also be seen in their interactions with people. Aries can come across as overly eager or intense when they first meet someone. They dive right in, whether it's striking up a conversation, forming a partnership, or even starting a relationship. For them, waiting and building up to something slowly feels unnatural. They are drawn to the excitement of new experiences, and they often thrive on the energy of new beginnings. They don't want to waste time analyzing every detail or waiting for the perfect conditions. Instead, they plunge in, full force, with all the passion and enthusiasm they can muster. However, while Aries are quick to act, this doesn't mean they don't learn from their mistakes. They may not always approach situations with the careful planning that others might prefer, but they are quick to adjust if things don't go as expected. The key difference between Aries' impulsivity and true recklessness is their ability to adapt and bounce back. When an Aries makes a mistake or faces a setback, they don't dwell on it. They learn from it and move forward, ready to try again with even more enthusiasm than before. And that's the beauty of Aries' impulsivity. It's not about being reckless or careless. It's about embracing the uncertainty of life and taking chances when others hesitate. While this can sometimes lead to mistakes or missteps, it also opens up countless possibilities and adventures that might otherwise be missed. In the end, Aries' impulsive nature is what makes them so exciting and dynamic. They live with a sense of urgency, a fire that pushes them to keep moving forward, even when the path ahead is unclear. Number 3, directness, seen as tactlessness. If there's one thing you can't say about Aries, it's that they're not honest. Aries individuals don't have time for pretenses or sugarcoating. They say what they mean, and they mean what they say. This level of honesty is something to admire, but not everyone can handle it. For many, an Aries' directness can feel like a punch in the gut. What might seem like a harsh or tactless remark is simply an Aries being upfront, and they do so without any intention to hurt anyone. Their words are often blunt, but they're not meant to cut, just to communicate exactly what's on their minds. At times, this directness can be jarring for people who are more used to a gentle, diplomatic approach. In a world where people often dance around difficult topics or speak in vague terms, an Aries can feel like a breath of fresh air or a sudden shock. Their straightforwardness doesn't allow for the usual social niceties, and they don't waste time trying to soften the truth. If you ask an Aries what they think, you're going to get a straight answer, no matter how it might land. For some, this can be uncomfortable, especially when emotions are involved. An Aries isn't one to tiptoe around sensitive subjects. They'll speak their mind, even if it's not the most popular opinion. And while that can be refreshing, it can also come off as tactlessness or insensitivity. But here's the thing, Aries are not trying to be hurtful. They don't see the need to wrap everything in layers of diplomacy or concern for how others might feel. They believe in honesty and transparency, values they hold in high regard. They think that by being direct, they can avoid misunderstandings and clear the air faster than most people. In their minds, It's better to get to the point and deal with the consequences than to leave things unspoken, leaving room for confusion and miscommunication. So when you feel like an Aries has said something too bluntly or harshly, it's not a personal attack. It's just their way of cutting through the noise and giving you the truth, plain and simple. What might help when dealing with Aries is understanding that their honesty doesn't come from a place of malice. Aries don't intend to hurt others with their words. They just believe that being clear is better than being polite. Their bluntness is not a judgment of others, but simply the way they operate. In fact, it often comes from a place of respect. They want you to know exactly where they stand, without games or ambiguity. So, while their directness can sometimes sting, remember that it's born from a sincere desire to be upfront and clear. It's not always the easiest trait to accept, but when you look at it through the lens of genuine honesty, you can start to appreciate their refreshing approach. Number 4, quick temper, misunderstood as volatility. When most people think of Aries, they often think of their quick temper. It's no secret that Aries can flare up in a heartbeat when things aren't going their way. Their emotions run high, and when they're upset, they don't hide it. This intense reaction can be off-putting to those who aren't familiar with Aries' personality, and they might perceive Aries as volatile or unpredictable. However, this quick temper isn't a reflection of instability or a tendency to fly off the handle over trivial things. It's simply the result of their passionate nature. For an Aries, emotions are all-consuming. When they're angry, they feel it with every fiber of their being, and it shows. But unlike many other signs, Aries don't tend to harbor resentment or hold grudges. Once their anger has had its moment, it fades as quickly as it came. It's a brief burst of energy that burns hot and fast. For Aries, getting upset is often a way to release built-up tension or frustration, but it doesn't last long. What people might interpret as volatility is really just their way of processing emotions in the moment. They don't waste time dwelling on negative feelings because to them, life is too short to stay angry for long. In fact, Aries often find it hard to stay mad at anyone for very long. After they've vented their frustration, they're usually ready to move on, often as if nothing ever happened. This can be confusing to those who are used to a more slow-burning approach to conflict, where people tend to stew over their anger for a long time. For Aries, it's all about the release of emotion in the heat of the moment, followed by an immediate shift back to normal. It's not a sign of instability. It's just the way they process and express their feelings. One of the things that can help people understand Aries better is realizing that they are quick to forgive. If you've had an argument with an Aries, don't expect them to hold it against you forever. Once they've let out their frustration, they're often ready to move on, leaving the past behind them. This is because Aries don't like to dwell on negativity. They're focused on what's ahead, and that means they don't have the time or energy to stay angry. So when they do snap or lose their temper, it's usually a passing moment, just a natural emotional release. And once it's over, they're done. Unfortunately, the fiery temperament of Aries can be misinterpreted by others who might think that their emotions are unhinged or that they're prone to losing control. However, what most people don't realize is that this isn't about volatility, it's about passion. Aries experience everything intensely, and that includes their emotions. Whether it's joy, excitement, or frustration, they feel things with a depth that others may not fully understand. Their quick temper doesn't signify a lack of self-control. It's a part of their vibrant, all-in personality. Number 5, passion, mistaken for self-centeredness. If there's one thing an Aries does best, it's being passionate. Aries don't just go through the motions. They pour every bit of themselves into whatever they care about. Whether it's their career, their relationships, or their personal goals, Aries approach life with a fire that's hard to ignore. But here's where things can get tricky. Sometimes Aries' passion is misunderstood as self-centeredness. Because Aries are so driven by their inner desires and ambitions, they can come across as if they're only focused on their own needs, goals, and aspirations. It's not that they don't care about others, far from it, but their intense focus on their passions can sometimes make them seem distant or overly consumed with their personal endeavors. When an Aries sets their sights on something, They dive in head first, fully committed, and often with a level of energy that can be overwhelming. To others, this might look like selfishness, but in reality, Aries are just dedicated. Their drive is part of what makes them exceptional, and Aries isn't satisfied with doing something halfway. They give their all to whatever they pursue, and that dedication can be contagious. But when they're in go mode, they might unintentionally overlook the feelings or needs of those around them. This doesn't mean they don't care. It just means that their focus is so intense that they sometimes forget to check in with others. To them, it's all about getting things done, and that can lead to the perception that they're more concerned with their own journey than with the people around them. However, if you take a closer look at an Aries' behavior, you'll notice something important. Aries are fiercely loyal to the people they love. While they might sometimes appear consumed by their own goals, they would drop everything to support a friend or loved one in need. Their passion for their own life doesn't diminish their capacity to care for others. In fact, their ability to stay committed to those they care about is one of the most admirable qualities of an Aries. But when their energy is fully directed toward a goal or ambition, it can be hard for others to see past their drive and understand that their intentions are not self-serving. So, the next time you encounter an Aries who seems wrapped up in their own world, try not to mistake their passion for selfishness. They might be so engrossed in their ambitions that they forget to check in with you, but they aren't trying to leave anyone behind. It's just that their fire burns so brightly that it can sometimes obscure the other aspects of their life. If you can see through that intensity, you'll find someone who's not only passionate, but also loyal, caring, and ready to share their success with others. Number 6, fearless attitude. Misunderstood as invulnerability. Aries are often seen as the fearless warriors of the Zodiac, always charging ahead without hesitation. Whether they're taking on a new project, facing an obstacle, or jumping into a new relationship, Aries seem to approach everything with the same bold, unshakable confidence. This sense of fearlessness is what makes them so magnetic and admirable. But there's a catch. This fearless attitude is often misunderstood as invulnerability, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Aries don't act fearlessly because they have no fear. In fact, Aries experience fear just like everyone else. They just don't let it control them. When an Aries faces a challenge, they feel the fear, the doubt, and the uncertainty. But instead of letting those emotions paralyze them, they charge ahead anyway. It's not that they don't feel vulnerable, it's that they've learned how to face those feelings head on and keep moving forward regardless. For an Aries, fear is simply another hurdle to overcome, not a reason to stop. This sense of invincibility can be tough for people who don't understand Aries' internal battles. When others see an Aries charging into something new without a second thought, it can seem like they're completely immune to failure, disappointment, or fear. The truth is, Aries are incredibly self-reliant. They have a deep trust in their own abilities, and they believe that even if things go wrong, they will find a way to fix it. This confidence might appear as though they never doubt themselves, but it's really just their way of handling life's uncertainties with strength. But it's important to remember that even though Aries are fearless in action, they are not immune to vulnerability. Aries do feel the sting of failure, the weight of disappointment, and the pain of rejection. They just don't let those things define them. They brush themselves off, learn from their mistakes, and keep pushing forward. They may not show it, but they are often fighting internal battles that others never see. Their fearlessness is not a lack of vulnerability, it's simply the bravery to keep going even when they're scared. What people often fail to understand is that Aries' fearless attitude is built on experience and resilience. They have been through tough situations before, and each time they've come out stronger on the other side. This builds their trust in themselves and their ability to overcome whatever comes their way. When you see an Aries charging forward, know that they've probably faced their share of challenges and fears along the way, and they've come out victorious, time and time again. Number 7, quick to act, seen as avoiding emotions. Aries are known for their quick decision-making and action-oriented approach to life. They are always ready to jump into the next challenge, whether it's starting a new project, taking on a new role, or diving into a new relationship. For Aries, action is everything. They thrive on the adrenaline that comes with being in motion, always moving forward and taking the lead. However, this fast-paced way of living can sometimes be misinterpreted by others as avoiding emotions or shying away from deep emotional processing. When Aries make decisions quickly and act with such intensity, it can sometimes appear that they're bypassing the emotional aspects of a situation, rushing past the deeper conversations or reflections that others might find necessary. If you've ever tried to have a deep heart-to-heart conversation with an Aries, you might have noticed that they often don't linger in emotional waters for long. Instead, they're more likely to dive straight into solutions and take immediate action to resolve any issues. While this is a strength, it can also leave those around them feeling like their feelings aren't being fully acknowledged or processed. The thing is, Aries do feel emotions, deeply in fact. They just don't always express or dwell on them in the way others might expect. Aries' way of dealing with emotions is often through action rather than words. For instance, if they're upset about something, they might immediately jump into fixing the situation rather than sitting down to reflect or talk through their feelings. This drive to take action can sometimes come off as avoiding the emotional aspect, but in reality, Aries are simply seeking ways to move forward rather than getting bogged down in emotion. They are solution-oriented, and their need to act is often their way of dealing with emotional tension. This can be frustrating for people who are more reflective or who prefer to sit with their feelings and process them slowly. Aries may seem like they're skimming the surface of emotional issues, and this can make it difficult for others to feel heard or understood. However, Aries' approach isn't about avoiding their emotions. It's about handling them differently. They believe in taking control of their circumstances, and when they're faced with emotional turmoil, they channel their energy into creating change rather than simply talking about it. For Aries, action is their form of emotional release, and they prefer to tackle issues head-on rather than let them linger. It's important to understand that Aries' way of processing emotions isn't wrong. It's simply different from how others might approach emotional situations. They don't want to get stuck in a cycle of negative feelings. Instead, they focus on solutions, on fixing what's broken, and on moving forward. So, if you ever find yourself frustrated by Aries' seemingly quick dismissal of emotions, remember that their actions are driven by a deep need to make things better, and they may not realize that sometimes what's needed is simply a space to feel and reflect. Number 8, desire for attention. Misinterpreted Aries love to stand out. They are bold, energetic, and charismatic, and they have a natural magnetism that draws attention to them wherever they go. Whether they are leading a meeting, commanding a room, or simply engaging in conversation, Aries seem to be the ones who always capture the spotlight. This often leads others to believe that they have a desire for attention, but this isn't necessarily the case. It's not that Aries are desperate for the limelight, it's simply that they have a natural presence that cannot be ignored. For Aries, being in the spotlight feels like a natural extension of who they are. They are leaders, and leadership often requires taking center stage. But this does not mean that Aries crave validation or are trying to prove anything to others. In fact, many Aries would rather let their actions speak for themselves than constantly seek applause. They don't want attention for the sake of it. They want attention because it allows them to show the world their passion, ideas, and energy. For Aries, being seen and heard is a way of sharing their vibrant energy and enthusiasm for life. It's not about seeking validation. It's about sharing their fire with others and inspiring those around them. When Aries walk into a room, they do so with confidence and with the expectation that people will take notice. This self-assurance is often misread as an ego trip or as if Aries are performing for the crowd. But in reality, Aries simply want to express themselves. Their love for attention comes from an innate desire to make an impact, to be seen, and to be heard. Not because they want to be admired, but because they are passionate about what they do. This can sometimes lead to others misunderstanding their intentions and assuming they are seeking admiration or praise. However, Aries are driven by their own internal motivation. and the attention they get is just a byproduct of their natural energy and passion. This need for attention can also come up in relationships. Aries tend to be dynamic and intense, and they often expect the same level of energy and engagement from their partners. If an Aries feels like they're being overlooked or not fully appreciated, they can become frustrated. It's not because they're attention-seeking in a needy way. It's because they crave an equal level of passion and enthusiasm in return. Aries thrive in relationships where they feel like their energy is matched and where they are truly seen and heard. Their desire for attention isn't about needing constant reassurance. It's about wanting to share their vibrancy and feeling connected to others who appreciate that about them. So, while it may seem like Aries are seeking attention for attention's sake, the truth is that their energy is just too magnetic to be ignored. They don't need to be the center of attention, but they do need to feel like their presence matters. It's not about an inflated sense of self. It's about an internal drive to make a positive impact on the world, whether it's through their work, relationships, or personal endeavors. Number 9, quick to forgive. Seen as lack of depth, one of the most distinctive qualities of an Aries is their ability to forgive quickly. If you've ever had a disagreement with an Aries, you might have noticed that once the conflict is over, they tend to move on with surprising speed. There's no dragging out the tension, no holding on to grudges, and often it seems like they've already forgotten about what happened. While this can be a relief for those who've apologized, it can also be misunderstood by others as a sign that Aries don't feel deeply about the issues at hand, or that they don't care as much as they say they do. In truth, the Aries' tendency to forgive quickly doesn't mean they don't have emotional depth. Rather, it's a reflection of how they process emotions. Aries feel things intensely, but they also don't like to linger in negativity. For them, holding on to anger or resentment is a waste of time. Their natural instinct is to resolve conflict swiftly and to move on with a sense of closure. This might seem shallow to those who are more inclined to reflect and process their feelings over time. But for Aries, it's all about finding peace and getting back to what really matters: their drive, their ambitions, and their passions. This can be misinterpreted by others as a lack of emotional maturity or depth. People may feel that if an Aries can forgive so quickly, then they couldn't have been that invested in the relationship or situation to begin with. But that's far from the truth. Aries forgive quickly, not because they don't care, but because they want to keep moving forward. They don't let the past hold them back, and their capacity to forgive is tied to their ability to live in the moment and focus on what lies ahead. The misconception arises because for some, forgiveness takes time. They need to process their emotions, understand the complexities of the situation, and come to terms with what happened. Aries, however, don't need all that time to heal. They might get angry, frustrated, or upset, but once they've expressed themselves, they're ready to let go of those feelings. For them, holding on to negative emotions doesn't serve a purpose. They may not dwell on the past, but they do learn from it. Aries are not quick to forgive because they are indifferent. They forgive quickly because they value emotional freedom. They don't let past grievances weigh them down for long. So if you find yourself thinking that an Aries doesn't truly care because they've moved on from a conflict, take a moment to reconsider. Their ability to forgive quickly is not a reflection of emotional shallowness. Instead, it's a sign of emotional resilience, an ability to let go of the past in order to create a better future. Aries are deeply connected to their feelings, but they understand that life is too short to dwell on hurt. Their ability to forgive is part of their strength, a strength that allows them to continue pushing forward without being held back by anger or resentment. Number 10, desire for action, misunderstood as avoidance of reflection. One of the most defining characteristics of an Aries is their desire for action. Aries thrive on energy, movement, and getting things done. They are driven by an internal urgency to act, make decisions, and see results quickly. Whether it's in their personal lives, their professional endeavors, or their hobbies, Aries are always in motion, always looking for the next challenge. But here's the catch. This insatiable need to act can sometimes be seen as an avoidance of reflection or a refusal to take the time to think things through. It's easy to assume that Aries don't care about the process of reflection, especially when they're always moving so quickly. They don't sit around analyzing situations or brooding over decisions. They prefer to dive in head first and adjust as they go. For some, this may appear like a lack of self-awareness or introspection. They may believe that Aries don't give enough thought to their actions, that they don't reflect on their decisions or the potential consequences. But in reality, this is far from the case. Aries do reflect, but in their own way. Their reflections are not lengthy deliberations filled with doubt and uncertainty. Instead, they tend to reflect through action. Aries prefer to learn by doing, making adjustments along the way, and figuring things out in real time. They may not pause to reflect in the traditional sense, but they are constantly evaluating and adjusting based on the feedback they receive from the world around them. For Aries, the idea of waiting for the perfect moment to reflect is counterproductive. They would rather start taking action and reflect as they move forward. This need for action comes from a deep-rooted belief that progress is made through movement, not in waiting. When Aries face a challenge, they don't hesitate to jump in. They trust themselves to figure things out along the way, and if something goes wrong, they'll adapt and course correct. This sense of urgency can be misunderstood by those who prefer to take their time to plan, think things over, and reflect deeply before acting. To others, Aries might seem reckless or impulsive, but in reality, they're just taking charge of their lives. They believe that waiting too long to reflect or make a decision only causes missed opportunities and delays. Aries' desire for action doesn't mean they don't care about the outcome of their decisions. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They care deeply about their results, but they understand that the only way to learn and grow is through active engagement. They don't want to waste time second-guessing themselves or being stuck in analysis paralysis. Aries are always moving, always testing the waters, and constantly learning through their actions. They may not reflect in the way others do, but they are always evolving through their experiences. So, the next time you see an Aries charging forward without hesitation, don't mistake their speed for a lack of reflection. Their need to act is their way of reflecting on the world, processing their thoughts, and learning what works. For Aries, action is the best form of self-reflection. Number 11, quick to act. Seen as avoiding emotions. When we think of an Aries, we often picture someone who is action-oriented, always on the move, and quick to jump into new projects or challenges. This natural drive is one of Aries' most defining traits. They're spontaneous, bold, and always ready to take on the world. However, what many don't realize is that this impulsive action is sometimes misunderstood as avoiding emotions or the more reflective side of life. If you've ever tried to have a heart-to-heart conversation with an Aries, you might have noticed that they don't linger in emotional spaces for long. They're quick to get back on track and focus on solutions or progress. For some, this may seem like they're avoiding emotional depth or not giving enough time to process their feelings. But the truth is, Aries do feel emotions deeply, just not in the same way others might. The key here is understanding that Aries process their emotions through action, rather than through prolonged reflection or verbal expression. When something bothers them, they don't sit with it quietly or brood. Instead, they tend to leap into action to change the situation or to work through the feelings in a way that feels productive. This doesn't mean that Aries ignore their feelings. It just means that they move through them rather than wallowing in them. This approach to handling emotions can be frustrating for those who prefer to take a step back and analyze or reflect on their feelings. When an Aries feels hurt, they might immediately channel that energy into something active, like exercising, working on a project, or tackling a new goal. To others, it can seem like they're running from their feelings, but in reality, they're simply using their energy to navigate through their emotions. The more Aries can focus on a task, the easier it is for them to cope with emotional situations, because for them, action brings clarity. This emotional processing method can make Aries appear detached, especially in situations where deep emotional conversations are needed. If you're someone who enjoys a slow, thoughtful conversation about feelings, Aries might come across as too blunt or dismissive, rushing to resolve the situation rather than truly exploring the depths of what they're feeling. But Aries don't view their emotional resilience as avoidance. They just handle it differently. They prefer to face challenges head on and move forward quickly. The quicker they can take control of a situation, the quicker they can leave the negative emotions behind them. So, while it may seem like Aries are avoiding their emotions, what they're really doing is managing them in a way that helps them stay grounded and productive. If you're close to an Aries, it might take some patience to understand that they don't always need to talk things out to feel better. Their way of working through emotions is active, energetic, and focused on moving forward, not getting stuck in the past. Aries may not always verbalize their feelings, but that doesn't mean they aren't processing them, just in their own unique way. Number 12, quick temper, seen as instability. One of the most widely recognized traits of an Aries is their quick temper. Aries are ruled by Mars, the planet of aggression and action, and this fiery energy often manifests in moments of anger. When Aries get upset, their emotions can rise rapidly, and they often express that frustration loudly and without hesitation. This quick flare-up of temper is one of the things that makes Aries so intense, but it's also one of the reasons why they are so misunderstood. Many people see Aries' anger as a sign of instability or even a lack of control. After all, when someone can go from calm to enraged in the blink of an eye, it's easy to assume that they're unpredictable or emotionally volatile. However, this quick temper is often just the first reaction, a brief outburst of energy that passes just as quickly as it appeared. What others don't always see is that Aries don't tend to dwell on their anger for long. Once they've expressed their frustration, they move on, leaving the moment behind them. Their anger is not deep-seated. It's just a burst of fiery emotion that burns bright and then fades. For Aries, anger is simply a reaction to being frustrated or blocked, and once they've had the chance to express it, they're often done with it. It's not something they carry with them or hold on to for days or weeks. This quick-to-anger temperament can sometimes make Aries seem emotionally unstable, especially if people around them are more slow to anger or tend to bottle up their emotions. However, the truth is that Aries' emotions are direct and expressed in the moment. When something upsets them, they don't hesitate to let you know, but just as quickly as they erupt, they calm down, often ready to move on to the next thing. This ability to move on quickly is a reflection of their resilience and their willingness to face challenges head-on without letting negativity linger. The issue with being misunderstood in this way is that many people don't realize how quickly Aries can move past their anger. For someone who is more prone to holding on to grudges or taking longer to cool off, Aries' ability to let go of their anger so quickly might seem like a lack of depth or sincerity. However, Aries' temper doesn't reflect a lack of emotional depth. It simply reflects their natural response to frustration. They get angry, they vent, and then they get back to what really matters: action, progress, and moving forward. One important thing to note is that Aries don't hold grudges. After they've had their moment, they're usually done, and they won't keep bringing up old issues or letting things fester. This can be hard for people who are used to dwelling on past conflicts. But for Aries, it's all about the present and the future, not the past. Their ability to let go quickly is actually a strength, as it allows them to stay focused on their goals without being bogged down by unresolved emotional baggage. If you find yourself on the receiving end of an Aries outburst, don't take it personally. Aries are rarely angry with the person themselves. They're frustrated by the situation or something external that's causing them stress. Once that frustration is expressed, they're often ready to move on, leaving any ill feelings behind. Aries may have a quick temper, but it doesn't define them or their relationships. It's simply another aspect of their fiery nature, a fire that burns bright and then quickly fades. As we've explored today, Aries is one of the most misunderstood signs of the zodiac, with a set of qualities that can easily be misinterpreted if you don't take the time to understand them fully. From their quick temper to their quick forgiveness, from their fiery energy to their impulsive actions, there's so much more beneath the surface of this bold and passionate sign than people often realize. First, we talked about how Aries' boldness is frequently mistaken for arrogance. Their self-assurance isn't about thinking they are better than anyone else. It's about their deep-rooted belief in themselves. Aries know what they are capable of, and they aren't afraid to show it. But this confidence isn't about putting others down. It's about standing up for themselves and pushing forward in a world that often demands nothing less. Their quick-to-act nature can often be misjudged as recklessness. They may rush into decisions, but they thrive on action and believe that moving forward is the key to growth. It's not about being careless. It's about taking risks and learning from the process. We also covered Aries' directness, which can come across as bluntness or tactlessness. But for Aries, honesty is paramount. They don't have time for pretenses or sugarcoating. They say what they mean and mean what they say. This can be jarring to those who aren't used to such raw honesty. But for Aries, it's a reflection of their transparency and desire to communicate openly. Then we explored their quick temper, which can often be seen as a sign of volatility or emotional instability. However, as we've seen, Aries' anger is quick, fiery, and burns out just as fast. Once they've expressed their frustration, they're ready to move on without holding grudges. Their emotions may seem intense, but they don't linger in negativity, which is a strength many don't realize about this fiery sign. We also discussed Aries' passion, which can sometimes be mistaken for self-centeredness. Aries are deeply dedicated to their goals and their desires, and their passion for life is contagious. But that doesn't mean they are indifferent to the needs of others. They give their all to everything they do, but they are also fiercely loyal to those they care about. Their desire for attention might be misinterpreted as vanity or a need for validation, but in reality, it's just Aries' natural energy shining through. They want to share their enthusiasm with the world, not simply be admired. Finally, we touched on how Aries' quick forgiveness and need for action are often misunderstood. Some might see their ability to forgive quickly as a lack of emotional depth, but in truth, it's a reflection of Aries' resilience and ability to move on quickly. They don't let negative emotions linger because they understand that life is too short. Similarly, their desire for action isn't about avoiding emotions. It's about creating change and moving forward. While others may prefer to reflect deeply on their emotions, Aries find clarity through action. So as you can see, Aries is far from one-dimensional. They are a complex sign full of contradictions, driven by a fiery passion and a constant need to move forward. But if you understand these traits in the right light, you can see just how dynamic and inspiring they really are. They may seem intense, impulsive, or even selfish at times, but underneath it all, they are simply living life at full throttle, unafraid to face whatever challenges come their way. Now, if you've enjoyed learning more about Aries and want to continue exploring the fascinating world of the Zodiac, don't forget to subscribe to Secret of the Zodiac. We've got plenty more videos on every sign, from Aries to Pisces, to help you understand the different personalities and characteristics that make up the Zodiac. There's so much to learn, and we want to share it with you. Also, make sure to check out our other videos where we dive deeper into the astrological secrets that you won't find anywhere else. Whether you're looking to understand your own sign better or just want to learn more about your friends and loved ones, we've got the content you need. Comment below and let us know what you think. Do you agree with the reasons why Aries is misunderstood? Have you ever had trouble understanding an Aries in your life? We want to hear from you. Your feedback helps us create more engaging and insightful content for everyone. And don't forget to like the video if you found this information valuable. Lastly, we need your help. Running this channel and creating these videos takes a lot of time, effort, and resources. If you've enjoyed the content we've provided and want to support us in continuing to bring you daily Zodiac insights, consider using the Super Thanks feature. It's a way to make a small donation to help with the costs of creating more content and keeping the channel going. Every contribution helps us provide even more high-quality videos and deeper dives into the Zodiac signs you love. By donating, you'll help us stay on track to bring you even more videos every single day with fresh content, expert insights, and fascinating information about astrology. Your support makes a big difference, and we're grateful for any help you can give. Plus, it's a great way to show your appreciation for the hard work that goes into making these videos. So please hit that super thanks button if you can, and continue supporting our work. Every little bit counts, and we're so thankful for your contribution. Thank you for being part of the Secret of the Zodiac community. We're excited to continue this journey with you as we explore the secrets of the stars, one sign at a time. Stay tuned for more videos, and we look forward to seeing your comments, likes, and donations.